moving slowly, slowing down the mind. Our minds are totally saturated in language. If we're not talking, then we're listening. And if we're on our own and we're quiet, then generally we're talking to ourselves in our head. So language, there's a stream of language all the time. So meditation is just all about trying to stop that and just enter a more natural process. So here, gentle movement and the breathing. So the movement doesn't need to be coordinated with your breathing, but you're aware of both. You're equally aware of both your pneumatic breathing and your moving. So there's a sense that they're together, they're part of the same thing. As you move side to side, just allow it to just become a gentle figure of 8. So just rounding off the edges. So I get more of a sense of like a continuous ribbon, continuous thread that's looping backwards and forwards. And feel gravity, the sinking. As we get into it, as we warm up, gradually the feet sort of creep apart a little bit so that we widen the stance so that we can just get a little bit lower. Feel the dantian wanting to get into the ground. Your center of gravity, so the earth is operating about this point. And now just bring the feet up a bit. And now breathing. So the arms are simply marking the breath. This is our fundamental rhythm, the one we're trying to reconnect to. Leaving the rhythm of speech and entering the rhythm of the breath. And to become even more aware of the breathing, just purse the lips, making a small hole to inhibit the flow of air. So you have to work a little bit harder with your diaphragm. And then just start turning with it. So as you open the hands, turn to the side. And then as you close the hands, turn back to the front. So the same exercise, breathing, but now I just have a turn in there as well. So I'm opening to the side and then I'm closing to the front. Feel gravity acting upon the dantian, forcing it to pull into itself, to stay together. Everything around the dantian, your sacrum, your hips, your groin, has to remain relaxed, relaxing. Otherwise, gravity cannot properly operate. We will tend to try and protect the dantian with surrounding tension. We want to let that go so that the earth can operate upon us and then we will achieve the correct tone. And then the two circle exercise, but with a real turn. So everything that we do can really be reduced to the figure of eight exercise. And then this simply becomes waving hands in the clouds. So holding the ball, holding the ball. And if you get too tied up in the visualization, then you'll just find yourself getting tense, especially around the sacrum, the dantian. So just keep this relaxing, feeling gravity just pulling me down into the legs. And then just turning it into knocking the gate of life. Feel the hips. Just want to become really aware of the hips, of where my hips are facing. So just try and get into the habit of keeping your head with your hips. So the only way I can move the head is by similarly turning the hips. And now just the spring in the legs. Feeling this. And just bouncing into the legs. Relaxing around the sacrum. It means that the legs will really take a lot of work, a lot of punishment, and they'll start hurting quickly. And just alternating the hands, same exercise, bouncing. If you find yourself beginning to talk to yourself in the head, just look at what you're doing physically. It probably means that you've sped up a little bit, you're going a little bit quicker. So if you just slow it down, then it's easier just to stay relaxed in the mind. And now bringing the hands up to the heart and then down. Like you're just beckoning something up from the ground and then you're pressing it back down. Breathing in and breathing out. And then we want to get the legs involved as well. So as I pull up with my hands, I just let the legs bend a little. And then I straighten the legs as I push down. So sense that you're breathing from the ground. So as you breathe in, you're breathing energy up the legs, into the heart, and then breathing out down through the legs. Again, just use the pursed lip breathing. So use that small hole to really control and regulate the speed of the breathing and coordinate the breathing with the movement. So we're using the pursed lip breathing to make the movements that we do even. And now just riding horse. So remember, knees out. The weight feeling as though it's going into the outside edges. Your instep is really strong and pulled up. And now without moving the arms really, just turn the head. So what we're trying to do is create a figure of 8 again. What I want to do is trace the energy flowing through the arms. So I imagine the energy is coming out of my back between my shoulder blades, comes across the shoulder blade, comes down the outside of the arm, and then comes down the inside of the arm to the chest, where it passes through, comes out of the back, and then across this shoulder blade and down this arm. This is the route down the outside of the arm, back, along the inside of the arm. So just holding the posture, but now using the head and just tracing with your eyes. You're just tracing this path with your eyes. So we're getting the energy to move without moving the body, by moving the mind. And just register how different it feels when the energy is coming out and down the arm to when it's coming back into the body from the fingers. And then the same idea, but now just with the legs. So I'm turning this way a little bit to help me visualize going down the leg. And then I turn back to bring it up here, and then this side. The weight will move a little bit, but we're trying to keep the body movement down to a minimum so that we're really having to use the mind to trace the line. It's even easier to feel here the difference between the coming out of the sacrum and down the leg to coming up the inside of the leg into the groin. Feel these points in the groin. This is where the energy comes back into when it comes up. And then it pops into the sacrum and comes out of this side here. And then it comes into this point in my groin. the sacroiliac releases, and that allows the energy out. So if it makes it easier, just use the hands to trace it, but just make sure it's in the legs, it's not in the arms, or your attention is with the legs. Bring it back. Okay, now this exercise is ostensibly easy, but actually quite difficult. So it's simply this exercise of circling the hands and going down. But what I want to do is try and have my arms, my hands just locked into my body. So if I want to move my hands, I have to move my whole torso. So I can either move hands left and right by turning, or I can move the hands up and down by sinking and rising. So there I have the two movements, up and down, left and right. And then I just make a circle. So here I have to sink down with my body, trying your utmost not to move the hands relative to the body, but feeling the movement. It's proprioception again. So normally our awareness of our arms is normally relative to our body. If my arm is here, I know it's here because I can feel it this distance away from my hip. Whereas when we keep everything locked in with the torso, it's difficult to feel that the hands are doing anything. So you just have to trust. So just watch yourself in the screen and just try and use the body. Going down is difficult. This exercise shows just how difficult it is. So we're so used to just inclining forwards and telling ourselves that we're sinking. Try and get maximum turn, and then maximum sink, and then maximum turn at the bottom, and then up. So this exercise is a real test of your sinking. And it doesn't matter how big the circle is, you could just do a tiny one, as long as you're sinking to get the hands to go down a little bit. And then just change direction. The better you do it, the less it feels like you're actually doing anything, even though your legs are screaming. And now 1 foot forwards, moving backwards and forwards. Again, with the two headlights here, trying to keep my hips forwards, just trying to develop an awareness of where my hips are pointing. It's very important for directing your energy. If my hips are pointing over here, when I come into the front foot, that's the direction my energy will be going. It will be diverging like this. I want my energy to converge as I come into a foot. So it's doing this. So my back leg has to really straighten to push this hip forwards. And my front leg has to not bend too much. Otherwise, this will slip forwards and I'll lose it. Both feet are sort of pushing against each other to keep this round here, because it wants to be like this. It wants to be riding horse. And I'm trying to produce bow and arrow. So it's that sort of the tension in the strong pulled bow that we just want to try and maintain as we go backwards and forwards, so it can release at any moment. So to start with, we just get a sense of almost locking this into just one thing. But then gradually, as it relaxes, we need to be very much aware of the two legs working with and against each other to maintain this image of stillness as I'm going backwards and forwards. And this is difficult. The mind wanders so readily. So we're using the body, we're trying to find exercises that the mind struggles with, not because they're complicated, but because they require a continuity in the mind. And then by practicing them, we get better at it, we develop the mind. We're not that interested in the body. We're using the body to get to the mind, using physical discipline to train the mind. So any teacher will tell you the only way to train the mind is through discipline. And any spiritual teacher will tell you the only way to combat the ego is with discipline. And discipline really is all about doing things you don't really want to do, making yourself do it regardless of whether you want to or not. Not because you're a devil for punishment, but because you know in the long run it's better. And as John used to say, the intelligent student just finds a way of enjoying it. Doesn't see the point in not enjoying what it's doing. It's so difficult. So just not allowing the habit to let the mind off the hook. It's almost like it never becomes a habit. Remember John's phrase, once is a habit? So it's like each time I do this, I'm trying to make it different. I'm trying to improve it, trying to do it better than I did it last time. So I'm not just slotting into a rut and then my mind will just think to itself about something unrelated. And now let's try the other foot. First of all, just get it. So keep it going, but just focus now on the straightening leg. So in order to keep my hips square here, I have to really straighten this back leg. Otherwise, this hip will get left behind. And then as I move back, this leg has to really straighten to push this hip back. Otherwise, I'll end up facing the corner. But right at the end of the weight transfer, the leg that's emptying really straightens. And then feel that straightening, extending all the way down into the toes. So my toes are extending. And then, in order to change direction and come back into that foot, I simply relax that stretched extension and the toes will start curling up. And then I can go with that curling and that will bring me into the foot. And now this leg really stretches, my toes extend, they separate, they splay. And then I relax that and the toes grip and pull me forwards. Feeling the straightening becoming the bending, the entering, the extension becoming the yielding. So this is something that we do naturally when we step. So when we're walking, the foot that's going out is extending, it's straightening and reaching as far as it can really. The toes are extending. Then as soon as it hits the ground, if not a little tiny bit before, it's beginning to curl up and bend. Here we're just simulating the action of walking without taking our feet off the ground. Open and close, open and close. So again, it's breathing. Everything comes back to the breathing. Feel the change in the spirit. So when you extend and stretch, your spirit gets quite fiery because it's quite an effort to reach out. And it's a big thing, reaching beyond your boundaries into the unknown. And then when you relax that and pull in, there's this sense that the spirit is retreating, is coming back in. It's like fishing. It's like you've sent out the fishing line. You've caught something and you pull it in to see what it is you've caught. Or like picking the apples. So every time we step in the form, every time we transfer the weight in the form, this is what's happening. The empty foot is really extending, and then it fills by pulling the body into it. So it's just this exercise. Feeling this extending, my fingers are really straightening, trying to bend backwards, if anything. And then I curl around something. I grab that apple and I pull it into my body. So now don't worry too much about this. This will now start turning. And now focus on the curling. So I really extend my fingers like a big apple, like a grapefruit or something that is difficult to get your fingers around sufficiently to be able to pick it off the tree or pick it up. So I really extend the fingers, and then I have to curl. So a sense that my fingers are extending even more in order to bend. And I want that to come into the whole arm. So I extend here, and then as my fingers start curling to grab, my whole arm becomes part of that circle. So this is ward off. Ward off is the straight becoming round, yielding. The attack is the round becoming straight. And everything bends in that arm. Not just the arm, but the mind. I want to feel how it affects the spirit. Now let's just do a little bit of stepping. So first of all, just loosening everything from the hips down, really. So again, just getting the hips to move a little bit like this. So the feet aren't coming off the ground, you're just bringing the heels up. And just get it to that point where the heels never really go down. So it feels quite unstable, quite wobbly. Feel those ripples of energy flowing up and down the body, and just enjoy it. Keep going and just try to relax the sacrum. So the sacrum is sort of dangling down through this. There's a sense that the sacrum is actually quite peaceful, and all of this movement is going on around it. Stepping. So first of all, just sink down and loosen the heel. When we sink into the foot, we root into the heel. So as I sink into this leg, I'm really feeling the heel. And then this heel can come off the ground. Because when your body's working naturally, the two sides of the body will want to do opposite things. So when this heel digs into the ground, this heel will want to come up. Touch the ground with my front of my foot. So I catch the ground with my spirit. So remember, the spirit is very quick. It's always there first if it's lively. And then I can sink into the heel. And as I sink into the heel, this heel comes off the ground. And then eventually the toes come off the ground as well. Toes down first, and then sinking into the heel. So as I sink into the foot, I'm not just sinking down, I'm moving in this direction so that this foot can come off the ground. Because when this foot comes up, this leg comes up, it's quite heavy, so it'll tend to pull me in this direction. So I have to keep a flow in this direction, at least with my mind. So if you get the balance of forces right, so the sinking balanced by the upward flow from your own strength, really, with flowing outwards to balance the pull of the leg. So if you get that in real dynamic equilibrium, then the sacrum can really relax. The problem with what we do is that it's so easy to cheat. It's so easy to use tension to give the impression that you're doing what you're meant to be doing. So we have to be really honest with ourselves, because no one's going to tell you that you're cheating, that you're doing it wrong. Partly because no one can be bothered to watch you. So most of the work, it's all done on our own. We have to be our own analyst. We have to really be able to watch what we're doing. The teacher can only tell you so much. So when you're standing here, you're like the tightrope walker with his long pole. Only this arm is this side of the pole and this leg is the other side of it. So I'm using the two counterbalances to just maintain more stability in the middle. And now let's try that, but with just the stepping exercise. So stepping forwards, bringing the weight into the foot, sending the weight back. And let's just get a figure of 8 going. Just looping around each leg. So when we get the figure of 8 going, it contains waving hands. But it also contains this exercise. Feel the two legs. My leg really extends in order to take the ground, and then it bends to suck me onto the ground. This straightens, and then it bends. This straightens, and then bends. So just feel the pulsing, the breathing of the legs and the spirit. Remember, what starts the weight moving from the full leg to the empty leg is the empty leg pulling the body. It's not the full leg pushing the body. That would be too slow and too coarse. This is pulling me back into it. This is extending, and now this leg is pulling me into it. This leg is straightening and then pulling me into it. And now let's try a bit with the other foot. First, just get it going. Just a gentle figure of 8. Bring it back. Going through the 5 circles. This circle in the legs that's going into the ground. This circle, like I'm sitting on one of those large physio balls, and my legs are having to accommodate the bulge out the front here. And then this circle here, the ward-off circle. And then this circle here, like you're holding a really big log, and your arms are just accommodating its curvature. And then the gentle bowing of the spine. So the chest is pulling in. My tail is digging down and forwards, right down under the ground. I'm going forwards, and then I'm coming up, but my head is also coming up and over. So a big circle that will include at least the other person you're working with. So the outside surface of the sphere or the circle is tough, strong, and the inside surface is soft and sensitive. So my arms here are strong, they're keeping the world out, but this is really sensitive, so that whatever comes in can be felt. Same with the legs. My outside of my legs is strong, but this is really soft. So this softness will draw into the heart. This softness will draw into the dantian. And then just bring it up. Again, this is always there in the background. You could slip into this always at any moment. So it requires a certain humor. Just the ability to just turn, really, just turn away or towards and not be too locked onto things. So when I woke up this morning, there was a phrase in my head: Tai Chi runs rings around the other. So it's a lovely English phrase of running rings around someone, really getting the better of them. By turning,